She asked for a break because of another guy, so I packed up and left. Now she's stalking me, and even her parents are apologizing, but I want nothing to do with it.
It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I first realized something was off. My fiancée, Sarah, had always been my rock, the one I could trust, but lately there had been a growing distance between us that I couldn't ignore. It started small, missed calls, late nights at work, and strange moments when her attention seemed to be elsewhere. Then, one day, she asked for a break. No explanation, no warning, just a simple, gut-wrenching request that shook me to my core. I didn't understand it. We had talked about marriage, about a future together. But now, as her words lingered in the air, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. What was she not telling me? And who was this new guy she kept mentioning? What started as a simple question in my mind soon spiraled into a painful reality I couldn't escape.
The days that followed Sarah's request for a break were a blur of confusion and anger. Every time I looked at her, I felt a weight in my chest, as if the woman I had loved for so long had suddenly become a stranger. We had been together for years, shared dreams, and built a life together, and now, in the blink of an eye, she was asking for space. The worst part was that she wouldn't tell me why. She wouldn't explain what had changed. I tried to be patient, tried to give her the space she needed, but the silence between us was deafening. It was like she was slipping away and I was powerless to stop it. And then the hints started to surface. I couldn't ignore them anymore. Sarah had begun talking non-stop about a new guy at her job, a man I had never heard of before. At first, I brushed it off, just casual work chatter, I told myself. But as the weeks went on, I noticed how she stopped mentioning him altogether. That's when the suspicion started to creep in. It wasn't just that she was distant, it was that she was hiding something from me, something that I couldn't yet see but knew was there. It was as if she had already checked out of our relationship while I was still clinging to hope. I confided in Emily, a friend who still worked at the same company as Sarah. Emily was always honest with me and she didn't hold back. Sarah had been growing more distant, she said. She'd even mentioned how wonderful this new guy was, how much he understood her. The words stung like acid. I had been working hard to surprise Sarah with a proposal to build a future for us, and all the while she was looking for someone else. That was the breaking point. I couldn't be the fool who kept waiting, hoping for a future with someone who had already chosen another path. My heart shattered, but I knew I had to make the hardest decision of my life. I had to walk away. The moment I decided to confront Sarah, I knew it would change everything. My heart pounded in my chest, key dial her number. I didn't know what to expect, whether she'd break down, deny everything, or finally open up. But the tension in my gut told me this wouldn't be an easy conversation. When she answered, her voice was distant, almost robotic, as if she had already emotionally detached from me. I couldn't help but feel a cold wave of anger sweep over me. How could she do this to me? After everything we had been through, after all the promises we had made, how had we gotten here? I asked her directly, needing answers that had been hanging over me like a dark cloud for far too long. Why, Sarah? Why now? I could hear her breathe sharply on the other end, clearly unprepared for the confrontation. She hesitated for a moment, and then, with a painful softness in her voice, she told me about him, the new guy at her job. She said his name so casually, like it didn't matter, like it didn't hurt. But I knew this was the real reason she had pulled away. She was already emotionally involved with him. I didn't want to hear any more excuses. How could I? The betrayal was suffocating. She had been looking for someone else before even telling me what was wrong. I didn't let her finish. I cut her off, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and sadness. If you've already found someone else, then this is over. I'm done.
Her silence on the other end told me everything. She wasn't fighting for us. She wasn't even fighting for herself. And that's when I realized I couldn't waste any more time on someone who had already chosen another path. I had to walk away. I had to save myself.
The decision to walk away wasn't easy. It felt like I was ripping out a part of myself that I had spent years building. But as I stood there, phone in hand, hearing the silence on the other end, I realized there was nothing left for me in this relationship. I had given everything, and yet Sarah had already checked out, emotionally if not physically. My heart felt like it had been shattered into 1,000 pieces, each one cutting deeper than the last. I didn't want to admit it, but I was finally forced to face the truth. She had already moved on. The pain of that realization twisted inside me, a sharp, gnawing ache that made it impossible to breathe. How could she do this to me? We had talked about marriage, about a life together. I had been saving up for a house, secretly planning a proposal for her. All of it, a dream I thought we were both building, turned out to be nothing more than a facade. I couldn't stay in a town that constantly reminded me of her, of the broken promises we had made. Every corner, every street carried memories of us. It was suffocating. I went to my boss and asked for a transfer. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't look at the same places where we had shared laughter and tears, knowing it would never be the same. I needed space, physical and emotional space. I needed to start fresh. I packed my bags, leaving behind a life I thought I knew, and moved to a new city, hoping the distance would give me the time I needed to heal. But the hardest part wasn't leaving. It was the fact that I had to leave without closure, without an explanation from her. It was as if Sarah had already let go of us, and I was still holding on to something that was never going to come back. In that new city, the silence was both comforting and lonely. I could breathe again, but in the back of my mind, there was always that question: did I make the right choice? Was I wrong for refusing to speak to her? As much as I hated the uncertainty, I knew one thing: I could never let her back into my life. Not after everything. The days turned into weeks. The ache of leaving Sarah behind began to settle in. But the peace I was hoping for, the relief of starting over, never fully came. Instead, I was constantly haunted by the memories of her. The way she used to smile at me, the soft touch of her hand, the late-night talks we had about our future. It was as if the city I had moved to was still filled with echoes of her, every shadow reminding me of the life I had walked away from. The truth was, I hadn't just left Sarah behind, I had left a part of myself with her. I tried to keep busy, focusing on work, keeping my head down and my mind occupied. But no matter how many hours I put in at the office, no matter how many new places I explored, Sarah's face would always appear in my thoughts. And then, one day, I heard from Emily. She was still working at the same company as Sarah, and the moment she called me, I knew something was wrong. "Hey, I just wanted to let you know, Sarah's been asking about you again," Emily said, her voice tinged with hesitation. "She's been, well, acting like nothing ever happened, like everything is fine between you two." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had moved on, or at least I thought I had, but Sarah wasn't letting go. Emily mentioned that Sarah had been crying, that she seemed to feel guilty for how things ended. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy, but it was hard to forget how easily she had moved on while I was still reeling from the blow. I couldn't understand it. Why was she still trying to reach out after everything? Was she feeling regret, or was she simply trying to win me back now that the new guy had disappeared? I was done. My heart was already closed off to her. I had given her every chance to explain, to make things right, but she never did. Now, there was nothing left but the silence I had craved in the beginning. But even in that silence, her presence lingered, and I hated myself for still feeling like I was waiting for something that would never come.
It was a cold morning when I got the first call that shook me to my core. My phone buzzed with a message from Emily, and the subject line alone was enough to send a jolt of unease through my chest. We need to talk. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks, ever since I moved away, so seeing her name again made my heart skip a beat. The words that followed in her text almost made me drop the phone. Sarah is moving to your city. She needs a ride. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, my hands shaking with a mix of disbelief and dread. Of course she was coming here. How could she not? She had already found her way into every crevice of my life before I even had a chance to breathe. Now, she was showing up again, like a ghost from my past, trying to re-enter my world when I had barely managed to close the door on her. I immediately texted Emily back, saying I wasn't going to do it, that I couldn't be the one to bring Sarah into my life again, not after everything that had happened. The message felt final, but deep down, I knew it was only the beginning of something far more complicated than I had anticipated. Emily tried to convince me, reminding me of how much Sarah had regretted the way things ended, how she cried every time she spoke about me. But all I could think about was how she had left me hanging, with no explanation, no closure, only a trail of broken promises. Then I got another call from Sarah herself, the sound of her voice immediately taking me back to the moments we had shared. She asked if we could talk, if I would give her a chance to explain herself. I told her, almost choking on the words, that there was nothing to explain. My heart felt like it was ripping in two. I could hear the desperation in her voice, how she pleaded with me for just one conversation. But I couldn't do it. I refused to let her back into my life, no matter how much it hurt. The memories of us were still too fresh, too painful. She had already walked away without looking back, and now I was supposed to open the door for her again? I couldn't. As I hung up, my phone buzzing with more messages from her, the silence around me felt deafening. I had made my choice, but the consequences were still looming large. It was like I was waiting for something, waiting for her to show up and destroy the fragile peace I had fought so hard to find. And I feared that the moment she arrived, I would be the one who would crumble.
A few days later, I found myself walking down the familiar streets of my new city, the weight of my decision pressing heavily on my shoulders. I had cut off Sarah for good, or at least I had told myself that. But then there she was again, right in front of me. I had just finished a run in the park when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Hi," she said, her voice tentative, almost fragile. It felt like time had stopped as I turned around and saw Sarah standing there, looking just like I remembered. Her hair, her eyes, everything about her was the same, yet somehow different. She wasn't the woman I had once loved, she was a ghost of that woman. For a split second, I froze. Every part of me wanted to reach out, to take her in my arms and pretend none of this had ever happened. But I knew I couldn't. I couldn't let myself go back there. The pain of losing her was still too fresh, like an open wound that hadn't healed. I took a deep breath, steadying myself before I spoke. "I don't want to talk to you," I said, my voice rough with emotion. She stepped forward, her eyes pleading, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't let her in again, not after everything. "We need to talk," she insisted, her voice trembling. I could hear the desperation in her words, the years of regret that seemed to hang between us. But all I could feel was the sting of betrayal, the hollow space where love used to be. "No," I said sharply, taking a step back. "I'm not going to do this, not again." Her face fell, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the Sarah I had once known, the woman who had shared my dreams, my hopes. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who had shattered everything I had believed in. The silence between us stretched out, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I walked away. As I left her standing there, I realized that this was it. This was the final goodbye, and it was up to me to leave the past behind. I had to keep moving forward, even if it meant never looking back.
The days after I saw Sarah turn the pack were filled with an eerie stillness. It was as if the universe had decided to test my resolve, to see if I truly meant it when I said I was done. I couldn't shake the image of her standing there, looking so vulnerable, so lost. For a moment, I had almost caved in. I had almost let her back in, but I didn't. I couldn't. And yet, the aftermath of that brief encounter lingered, gnawing at me, twisting in my gut. I had made the right decision, I told myself, but the isolation I felt in the city, so far from everyone I knew, only amplified the pain. I tried to distract myself, throwing myself into work and settling into a routine, but nothing felt right. The weight of the past, of everything I had lost, followed me like a shadow. The memories of Sarah and me, of us together, seemed to haunt every corner of my apartment, every street I walked down. Then came the message that hit me like a freight train. Sarah's parents reached out to me. I hadn't expected it, hadn't even considered it, but there it was, an apology from them for the way things had ended. Her mother, kind and earnest, asked me to reconsider, to speak with Sarah again. But what was there left to say? The conversation had already happened, hadn't it? Sarah had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. But the ache was still there, the weight of everything we had shared, all the promises we had made, and the quiet hope I once had for a future together. It all felt so far away now. I had walked away for my own sanity, but the ghost of what we could have been still lingered in my mind. I wasn't sure if I would ever truly be free of it, but I knew one thing: I couldn't go back, not now, not ever. Not now, not ever.
Just when I thought I had finally started to breathe again, the past reared its ugly head. It wasn't Sarah's voice that haunted me this time. It was the constant reminder of what I had left me behind. I buried myself in my new life, tried to make peace with the city and the empty apartment that felt like both a refuge and a prison. But then, one afternoon, I found myself staring at a message from Emily, my only link to the past. The words in her text sent a jolt of dread through me. "Sarah's been asking about you again. She says she's been thinking about everything, regrets how it ended." A cold shiver ran down my spine. Regrets? How many times had I heard those words before? They were empty now, hollow, meaningless. If Sarah truly regretted anything, she would have fought harder for us. She would have told me the truth before it all fell apart. Yet here she was, spinning the same old tale of remorse, as though it could erase the pain, the betrayal, the years of history we had shared. Emily's words lingered in my mind. She's really struggling. She wants to apologize. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah wasn't really apologizing for me. She was apologizing for herself. She was regretting not getting what she wanted, not keeping me on the hook while she explored her options. I was just the one left behind. A part of me, one I hated, wanted to reach out, to hear her out, to give her the chance to explain. But then I remembered the look on her face in the park, how she didn't fight for me then, how she had already chosen someone else when she walked away. That was the truth. Not her apologies, not her regrets. I realized then that I had been given my chance at closure the moment I walked away. But Sarah's message, her relentless attempts to reach out, made me question if I was truly ready to sever the last ties that bound us. I couldn't keep running. I couldn't keep looking back. This was the moment I had to let go for good. And I did. For the first time, I chose myself.
I had finally convinced myself that I was done, really done with Sarah. I had walked away from everything, from the pain, the memories, the promises we had made. I had found a new rhythm in my life, even though the ache of her absence still lingered in the corners of my mind. But then, everything changed in an instant. I had returned to my hometown for the holidays, thinking that I could find some semblance of normalcy among family and old friends. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. At the party, surrounded by people I hadn't seen in months, I felt a flicker of recognition as I turned my head. There she was, Sarah. She was laughing, chatting with a group of women, looking completely unbothered by the wreckage she had left behind. I froze. For a brief moment, time felt like it stood still. The sight of her smile, the way she threw her head back in laughter, hit me like a tidal wave. It was as if all the walls I had carefully built around my heart came crashing down in that one instant. My mind raced, but I did nothing. I stayed in the shadows, watching from afar, struggling to comprehend why, even after everything, I still felt drawn to her. I had ended things for a reason. I had chosen to walk away for my own sanity, yet seeing her again made all the old emotions resurface. I wanted to approach her, to confront her, to demand answers. But then I remembered, she wasn't mine to fight for anymore. The evening went on, and the pain remained, thick and suffocating, a reminder that some scars never truly heal. As I left the party that night, I realized that the wound Sarah had left was deeper than I ever expected. I had to remind myself that walking away was the only way forward, no matter how badly I wanted to turn back.
The next few days after that party were a blur of conflicting emotions. I tried to go about my days as usual, but the image of Sarah, laughing and carefree, kept replaying in my mind. I couldn't understand why seeing her again felt like a punch to the gut, despite the fact that I had been the one to end things. The way she moved through the crowd that night, so effortlessly, so unaffected by what we had been through, made me question everything. It felt like I had never mattered at all. My stomach churned with a mixture of anger and longing. Had I made the right decision? Was I just running from the love I thought was still there, still waiting? It was only a matter of time before the inevitable happened. Sarah's parents reached out to me. I should have expected it, but when I saw their names on my phone, a wave of dread washed over me. They apologized, asked for forgiveness, and urged me to speak to Sarah. They seemed genuinely sorry, but their words fell flat. I could hear the sincerity in their voices, but it wasn't enough. The years of manipulation, the silence, the coldness from Sarah, it all came rushing back, and I was reminded of why I had made the choice to cut ties. They didn't understand. They didn't see the same things I did. They didn't see Sarah for who she truly was, someone who could walk away without a second thought, someone who could move on with someone else without so much as an explanation. I debated for hours, fighting the urge to answer their pleas, but I knew deep down that I had already given my closure when I walked away. I had already said everything I needed to say. Sarah had made her choice, and I had made mine. I wasn't going to let her parents convince me otherwise. And yet, as I clicked delete on the message and turned my phone off, I couldn't help but feel the weight of the past pressing down on me once again. The battle wasn't over, but I had to stay strong. I had to keep moving forward, even if it meant leaving her behind completely.
The silence that follows Sarah's parents' message was almost suffocating. I had made my decision, but the weight of it felt unbearable at times. It was as if everything, the years we spent together, the love I thought we shared, was slipping through my fingers like sand. I knew I had to close that chapter for my own peace, but every moment felt like a test. Was I really ready to walk away forever? The lingering doubts crept into my mind, pushing me to question myself. I took a deep breath and reminded myself why I couldn't go back. Sarah had made her choice. She had moved on, emotionally at least, and I was just the ghost of a past she'd outgrown. I had walked away because I needed to heal, to rebuild my life from the ruins she had left behind.
But even now, her presence in my life, no matter how distant, still haunted me. It wasn't about her anymore. It wasn't about fixing things that were already broken. It was about reclaiming myself, about finding the strength to leave the past in the past. So, I walked away for good. No more second chances, no more regrets. I had already learned the hardest lesson of all. Some chapters are better left closed. And this one was over.